Good day, we are Group 6 from 3.2 BSBA FM Financial Management class, and we will discuss Chapter 8 Risks and Rates of Return. But before that, let us go to our icebreaker, which is called the number game. So here's the mechanics. The game master will flash a number from 0 to 1000. The player will guess the number as fast as he or she can. If the guess is correct, then he or she wins the game. However, if the guess number is incorrect, then the audience will tell whether the number he or she said is higher or lower, and he or she will continue guessing. The players with the shortest of time guessing will win the game and will receive a prize. Now let us proceed to the significance of the study. So risk refers to the uncertainty or variability of returns associated with an investment. It's crucial because investors want to minimize the likelihood of losing money. Different investments carry different levels of risk. Understanding the risk allows investors to make informed decisions based on their risk tolerance, financial goals, and time horizon. Rates of return measure the profitability of an investment over a specific period. They indicate how much an investment has grown or declined in value. Rates of return are significant because they help investors evaluate the performance of their investments and compare them to alternative opportunities. Higher rates of return generally indicate higher profitability but often come with higher risk. So, the relationship between risk and rates of return is typically positive. Higher risk investments tend to offer the potential for higher returns to compensate investors for taking on additional risk. However, this relationship is not always straightforward, as some investments may offer high returns with relatively low risk, although these opportunities are rare. Investors must strike a balance between risk and return based on their individual financial situation, investment objectives, and risk tolerance. Diversification across different asset classes, and investment vehicles is a common strategy used to manage risk while seeking reasonable rates of return. So, let us proceed to the discussion proper. We have risk. In its broad definition, risk refers to the potential for loss, harm, or negative outcomes resulting from uncertain events or circumstances. In relation to investments, it refers to the likelihood that an investment's actual returns will differ from its expected returns. It encompasses various factors that investors face regarding the future performance of their investments and the possibility of losing some or even all of their invested capital. Understanding and managing risk is essential for investors to make informed decisions and protect their investment or capital. For additional information, we have types of risk such as mar- market risk, which is the loss of risk of losses due to factors such as economic downturns, interest rate changes, and events affecting the overall market. We had we have credit risk due to the failure of a borrower to repay a loan or meet its obligations. We have inflation risk that the purchasing power of future returns will be eroded by inflation. Currency risk, which is due to the fluctuations in exchange rates when investing in assets denominated in foreign currencies. Let's go to Chapter 8.1. We have standalone risk. Standalone risk, also known as a project risk or unsystematic risk, refers to the risk associated with a single investment or project within a diversified portfolio. It is the risk that is specific to that particular investment and is not related to broader market factors. Standalone risk can arise from various sources, including company-specific factors, which is the products and services demand, management quality, operational efficiency, and financial stability. Industry conditions such as competitions, regulatory changes, and technological advancements that can impact the standalone risk of a project or investment, or project-specific characteristics. Factors such as the nature, scope, complexity, and duration of the project can contribute to its standalone risk and its risk profile. Standalone risk can be measured using various financial metrics such as standard deviation, beta, and coefficient of variation, which will be discussed as we proceed. Okay, so we have probability distribution. Probability is a measure that quantifies the likelihood of an event occurring. It is expressed as a number between 0 and 1, where 0 indicates impossibility or the event will not occur, and 1 indicates certainty, the event will occur. A probability distribution is a mathematical function or model that describes the likelihood of different outcomes or events in a specific scenario. It provides a systematic way to assign probabilities to each possible outcome, enabling the analysis of uncertainty and risk in various fields such as statistics, economics, finance, engineering, and physics. If all possible events or outcomes are listed, and if a probability is assigned to each event, the listing is called a probability distribution. Probability distributions are used in statistical analysis to model and analyze random phenomena such as the outcomes of experiments or the behavior of random variables. They are essential for making predictions, estimating probabilities, and making decisions under uncertainty. Expected rate of returns. Expected rate of return is a measure used in finance to estimate the average return an investor can anticipate from an investment over a specified period. Multiply each possible outcome by its probability of occurrence and then sum these products. We now obtain a weighted average of outcomes. So, to compute the expected rate of return, here's the formula flash in your screen. Expected rate of return equals to R hat equals to P, which is the probability of the outcome, R is the possible outcome, and N is the number of possible outcomes. So to compute the expected rate of return, let us use the data for Martin products, where R hat equals to P1 times R1 plus P2 times R2 plus P3 times R3. We have 0.3 times 100% plus 0.4 times 15% plus 0.3 times negative 70%, and we'll get 15% for Martin products. And let us use the US Water's expected rate of return, which is also 15%, where 0.3 times 20% plus 0.4 times 15% plus 0.3 times 10%, and we'll get again 15%. Let us proceed to the measuring standalone risk, the standard deviation. Standard deviation is a statistical measure of the variability of a set of observations. The smaller the standard deviation, the tighter the probability distribution, and accordingly, the lower the riskiness of the stock. To be most useful, our risk measure should have a definite value. We need to quantify the tightness of the probability distribution. One such measure is the standard deviation, whose symbol is O, pronounced as sigma. Here are the steps to calculate the standard deviation. 1. Calculate expected rate of return. Number 2, deviation. 3, variance. And then 4, the standard deviation. Let us use the data for Martin product. We previously found R hat, or the expected rate of return, is 15%. Simply subtract the expected rate of return from each possible outcome to obtain a set of deviations. We have 100% minus 15 equals 85. 15 minus 15 equals 0. And then negative 70 minus 15 equals to negative 85. And that's the deviation. So, for the variance, we'll just simply square each deviation, then multiply the result by its probability of occurrence, and then sum those products to obtain the variance of the probability distribution. We have 85 squared is 7,225. We have 0 squared, of course 0, and then negative 85 squared equals 7,225. And then we'll multiply it to the result by its probability of occurrence. We have 7,225 times 0.3 equals 2,167.5. 0 times 0.4 equals 0. And then 7,225 times 0.3 equals 2,167.5. And then we'll add it. We have variance equal to 4,335. And then finally, find the square root of the variance to obtain the standard deviation. Standard deviation equals to square root of 4,335 equals to 65.84%. Let us proceed using historical data to measure risk. In the example just given, we describe the procedure for finding the mean and standard deviation when the data are in the form of a probability distribution. If only sample returns data over some past period are available, the standard deviation of returns should be estimated using this formula, where R bar T denotes the past realized rate of return in period T, and R bar average is the average annual return earned during the last n years. So here's an example. We have year 2003 with R bar average is 15%, 2004 with negative 5, and 2005 with 20. Let's compute the R bar average, which is equals to 15% minus 5% plus 20% divided by 3 equals to 10%. After getting the R bar average, let us use the estimated standard deviation formula. We have square root of 15% minus 10% squared plus negative 5% minus 10% squared plus 20% minus 10% squared divided by 3 minus 1. And we'll get square root of 350% divided by 2 equals 13.2. The historical standard deviation is often used as an estimate for the future standard deviation. Much less often and generally incorrect R bar average for some past period is used as an estimate of R hat, the expected return future. Because past variability is likely to be repeated, standard deviation may be a good estimate of future risk. However, it is much less reasonable to expect that the average return during any particular past period is the best estimate of what investors think will happen in the future. Let's proceed to the measuring standalone risk, the coefficient of variation. If a choice has to be made between two investments that have the same expected returns but different standard deviations, most people would choose the one with lower standard deviation and, therefore, the lower risk. Similarly, given a choice between two investments with the same risk, standard deviation, but different expected returns, investors would generally prefer the investment with the higher expected return. To most people, this is a common sense. Return is good, risk is bad. And consequently, Investors want as much return and as little risk as possible. But how do we choose between two investments if one has the higher expected return but the other the lower standard deviation? To help answer this question, we use another measure of risk, the coefficient of variation, which is the standard deviation divided by the expected return. Here's the formula for the coefficient of variation. We have CV equals sigma, or the standard deviation, divided by r hat. The coefficient of variation shows the risk per unit of return, and it provides a more meaningful risk measure when the expected returns on two alternatives are not the same. Since U.S. Water and Martin Products have the same expected return, the coefficient of variation is not necessary in this case. Here, the firm with the larger standard deviation, Martin Products, must have the larger coefficient of variation. In fact, the coefficient of variation for Martin is 65.85 divided by 15 equals 4.39, and that for U.S. Water is 3.87 divided by 15 is 0.26. Martin is almost 17 times riskier than U.S. Water on the basis of this criterion. Let's proceed to the risk aversion and required returns. Risk aversion refers to an investor's preference for avoiding risk or uncertainty when making investment decisions. Most investors are risk averse. They tend to prioritize the preservation of capital and are less willing to accept higher levels of risk in exchange for potentially higher returns. If you choose the less risky investment, you are risk averse. Most investors are indeed risk averse, and certainly the average investor is risk averse with regard to his or her serious money. Required returns represent the minimum level of return that investors expect to receive or earn from an investment to compensate for taking on a certain level of risk. So here's the formula. Expected rate of return equals expected ending value minus cost divided by cost. Let's have an example where your ending value is 1.05 million and your cost is 1 million. So 1.05 million minus 1 million is 50,000, and divided by its cost, 1 million, and you'll get 5% rate of return.
Chapter 8.2 Risk in a Portfolio Context. Risk in a portfolio context refers to the uncertainty or variability of returns associated with holding a combination of different assets. Portfolio risk takes into account not only the risk of individual assets but also how those assets interact with each other within the portfolio. Banks, pension funds, insurance companies, mutual funds, and other financial institutions ay nare-required ng law to hold diversified portfolio. Kasi ang mga investors hindi nila gusto ang isang asset kapag ito ay isang risky. Pero kapag ang isang asset ay nasa isang portfolio, pwedeng mabawasan ang risk nito. Next is expected portfolio return. The expected return on a portfolio is simply the weighted average of expected return on the individual asset held in the portfolio. Ito ay ang weight average ng expected return ng mga individual na asset na nasa portfolio. To get the expected return percentage is equal weight average of expected return multiplied to the expected return of the first stock. At ipa-plus mo siya ulit sa weight average of expected return and multiply to the expected return of the second stock. At i-repeat mo lang yung process kung ilang stock ang nasa isang portfolio. Pero bago natin makuha ang expected return, kailangan muna natin makuha ang weight average of expected return. For the example is, you have 100,000 sa portfolio at mag-invest ka sa bawat stock ng 25,000 Para makuha yung weighted average ng expected return, 25,000 divided by to the 100,000 is equal 0.25. So, the weighted average is, ang expected return is 0.25. 0.25 multiply to the first stock, which is 12%, plus 0.25 and multiply again to the second stock, which is 11.5%, plus 0.5 multiply to the third stock, which is 10%, and plus 0.25 and multiply for the fourth stock, which is 9.5%. The answer will be is equal 0.1025. And then we multiply it to the 100. So the expected return percentage is 10.25%. Next is realized rate of return. Realized rate of return refers to the actual return of earned of an investment over a specific period of time. The actual return usually turns out to be different from the expected return except for the reckless asset. At realized rate of return, ito ay actual na kita o tubo na mula sa isang investment over a specific period of time. Ang realized rate of return ay pwedeng iba sa inaasahan na rate of return dahil sa pagbabago ng halaga ng mga asset. The formula for realized rate of return is equal to the total gain or loss divided by to the initial investment and multiply to 100%. Next is portfolio risk. Portfolio risk refers to the overall level of uncertainty or variability associated with the return of a collection of investment held within an investment portfolio. Portfolio risk, ito ay posibilidad ng hindi inaasang pagbaba ng actual na return na isang investment portfolio. Ang mga causes ng portfolio risk ay pwede magsimula sa macroeconomic change, gaya ng pagtaas ng mga interest sa economy o pagbagsak ng stock market. Mayroong iba't ibang portfolio risk. Ang una ay ang market risk, sunod ang credit risk, liquidity risk, at ang panghuli ay ang inflation risk. Ang pagsuri sa portfolio risk ay mahalaga para sa mga investors para maprotect nila ang kanilang investment at malaman ang pwedeng maging risk na mangyayari. Next is correlation. Correlation is the tendency of two variables to move together. Then correlation coefficient measure the degree of relationship between two variables. Ang correlation naman ay ang concept na nagsasabi sa relationship o ugnayan ng dalawa o higit pang mga variable. To the investment, ang correlation coefficient ay madalas na ginagamit para sukatin ang relationship ng mga asset o investments. Diversifiable risk versus market risk. A portfolio consisting of all stock is called market portfolio. Ang market portfolio ay nagrepresent o nagpapakita ng iba't ibang uri ng mga asset tulad ng stocks, bonds, at iba pang mga investment instrument. The part of a stock risk can be eliminated is called diversifiable risk, where the part that cannot be eliminated is called market risk. Ang diversifiable risk is caused by such random event kagaya ng lawsuit, strikes, successful and unsuccessful marketing program, winning or losing a major contract. Sa market risk, it systematically affect most of the businesses kagaya ng war, inflation, recession, and high interest rates. Dahil karamihan sa mga stock ay negatively affected by these factors, ang market risk ay hindi maaalis ng diversification. Ang diversifiable risk ay maaaring makontrol o mabawasan sa pamamagitan ng investment diversification. Because the objective of Diversification ay ang mabawasan ng diversifiable risk sa isang portfolio. Capital Asset Pricing Model o CAPM is a model based on the position that any stock-required rate of return is equal to the risk-free rate of return plus a risk premium that reflects only risk remaining after diversification. Ang CAPM ay describes a relationship between risk and rates of return. Ito rin ay nagpapakita ng expected return of an assets depends on the risk-free rate and also the beta of the asset. Using the CAPM, pwede mong ma-evaluate ang isang asset kung ito ay nag-offer ng sapat na kita based sa risk nito. At ang CAPM ay makakatulong din to assess the right price for the assets. Next is relevant risk. Relevant risk is the risk of a security that cannot be diversified away. This is the risk that affects portfolio risk and thus it's relevant to our rational investors. Relevant risk is the risk associated with the stocks, which is defined as the risk of an investment loss to a potential investors because of the expectation of lower return. Next is the concept of beta. Beta is the key element of the CAPM. The tendency of a stock to move up and down with the market and thus its market risk is reflected in its beta coefficient. Kung ang stock ay may tendency na to move up and down with the market, pati na rin ang market risk, ito ay nagre-reflect sa beta coefficient. Beta is the most relevant measure of any stock risk. Dahil sa stock beta coefficient, nalalaman kung ang stock ay nakaka-apekto sa riskiness ng isang diversified portfolio. Beta coefficient is a metric that shows the extent to which a given stock return move up and down with the stock market. Beta thus measure market risk. The benefits of diversifying overseas. The increasing ability of intentional securities is making it possible to achieve a better risk return trade-off than could be obtained by investing only in local securities. Diversifying overseas ay makakatulong sa mga investors to build more resilient, balanced, and potentially high-performing investment portfolios. Investing overseas might result in a portfolio with less risk but a higher expected return. This result occurs because of low correlation between the returns on local and international securities, along with potentially high return on overseas stocks.
Moving on to Chapter 8.3, the relationship between risk and rates of return. Finance is all about understanding how risk and return work together. So people who invest money, may it be regular folks or big organizations, are always thinking about how to balance the chance of making more money with the risks involved in their investments. The idea of risk versus return is super important in finance. It affects how people decide where to put their money, how they manage their investments, and how they figure out the value of the things that they own. For a given level of risk, as measured by beta, what rate of return is required to compensate investors for bearing that risk? So we have previously discussed CAPM and beta. So capital asset pricing model, or CAPM, is a big deal in finance. So it basically says that the amount of money that you expect to make from an investment should match up with how risky the investment is. And one of the key things that it looks at is something called beta. Okay, so beta measures how risky an investment is compared to the overall market. So in simple terms, CAPM helps investors figure out how much they should expect to earn from an investment based on how risky it is. So this helps them make smart choices about where to put their money and how to manage the risks. So understanding this sets the stage for diving deeper into the world of risk and return in finance. The market risk premium, or RPM, shows the premium investors require for bearing the risk of an average stock. Okay, so the size of this premium depends on how risky investors think the stock market is and on their degree of risk aversion. Okay, so the market risk premium, or RPM, is a big deal in finance, especially in the capital asset pricing model, or the CAPM. Again, it's basically the extra return investors want for taking on the average risk of the whole market. So this premium tells us how much more investors expect to earn above a risk-free rate when they invest in a mix of risky assets. We only need two things to get the market risk premium, or RPM. Okay, first is the required rate of return, or RM, and the second one is the risk-free rate of return. So RM, sometimes written as RRR, is the required rate of return on a portfolio. Okay, so consisting of all stocks, called the market portfolio. So this is the minimum. Okay, so this is the minimum amount an investor or company seeks or will receive when they embark on an investment or a project. So of course, the RM, or required rate of return, for every investor differs. So because of the different tolerance for risks. So on the other hand, the risk-free rate of return, or RRF, is the interest rate an investor can expect to earn on an investment that carries zero risk. Okay, so to calculate the RPM, you need to subtract the risk-free rate from the expected return on the market. Okay, so this gives you an idea of how much more return investors need to compensate for market risk. So it's all about how investors see the risk of the market and how much they want to be rewarded for it. So for an example, again with the formula, RPM is equal to required rate minus risk-free rate. Okay, so we have RRF, which is 6%, and the required rate of return, or RM, is 11%. So that will be 11% minus 6%, and the final answer is 5%, or a market risk premium, or RPM, is 5%. The risk premium of an average stock, RM minus RRF, is actually hard to measure because it is impossible to obtain a precise estimate of the expected future return of the market, which is the RM. And analysts often look to historical data to estimate the market risk premium. Estimating the RPM is tricky because it involves predicting future market returns, which is uncertain. So usually analysts look at past data to make educated guess about the future, but using historical data has its problems. So the time period you pick can skew the results, and historical data might not capture changes in the market and investors' attitude over time. So the RPM isn't set in stone. It changes depending on what's happening in the market and how investors feel about the risks. So economic factors, government policies, and unexpected events all affect how much risk investors are willing to take. So when things are uncertain, investors demand a higher premium for risk. But when things are looking good, they might accept a lower premium. Understanding these changes in the RPM is super important for investors. Okay, so it helps them price assets decide where to put their money, and manage the risks. So by keeping an eye on how the market risk premium changes over time, investors can make smarter decisions about risk and return. The risk premium on individual stocks varies in a systematic manner from the market risk premium. Okay, for example, if one stock were twice as risky as another, its risk premium would be twice as high. While if its risk were only half as much, its risk premium would be half as large. So further, we can measure a stock's relative riskiness by its beta coefficient. So if we know the market risk premium, or the RPM, and the stock's risk as measured by its beta coefficient, B sub I, we can find the stock's risk premium as the product of RPM multiplied by B sub I. To give you an example, okay, first we have the formula risk premium for stock I, or RP sub I, is equal to RPM multiplied by B sub I. Again, RPM is the market risk premium and B sub I is the beta coefficient. Okay, so B sub I, if B sub I is 0.5 and RPM is equal to 5%, then we have to convert 5% first to decimal, so that's 0.05, and then multiply the converted RPM, which is 0.05, to the beta, which is 0.5. That will give us the answer of 0.025 or 2.5% when converted to percentage. Security market line, or SML equation, is a key idea from the capital asset pricing model, or the CAPM. So it's an equation that shows the relationship between risk as measured by beta and the required rates of return on individual securities. So it's like a graph, okay, that helps us see how much return we should expect from an investment based on how risky it is. So the equation for SML looks like this. Required return on stock is equal to risk-free rate plus market risk premium, or RPM, multiplied by beta. So going back to the previous formula, RPM is equal to required rate, or RM, minus risk-free rate, or RRF. So this makes the final formula to be required return on stock I is equal to R sub I. So that's the same. R sub I is equal to RRF plus RM minus RRF multiplied by beta. Okay, so reading the slide, security market line, or SML, is the line on the graph that shows the relationship between risk as measured by beta and required rate of return for individual securities. Okay, so here we have the security market line, or SML. Required rates of return are shown on the vertical axis, while the risk as measured by beta is shown on the horizontal axis. Okay, so again, the equation of security market line, or SML, is required return on stock is equal to risk-free rate of return, which is RRF, plus market risk premium multiplied by beta. So that's R sub I is equal to RRF plus RM minus RRF, which is the formula again for market risk premium, multiplied by beta. Okay, so with a given example, turn your attention to the upper right corner. So we have 6% for RRF, and then we have 11% for RM. Okay, so required rates of return. So as shown on the horizontal axis, let's solve the value if B is equal to 0.5 as low, B is equal to 1 as the average, and then B is equal to 2 as high. Okay, so riskless securities have B is equal to 0. Therefore, our given RRF would be the x-intercept in plotting that to the graph. Okay, so that is now our risk-free rate. So the point where the SML hits the vertical axis shows us the risk-free rate, which is what we get from totally safe investments. Okay, so using B is equal to 0.5 is for our R sub low. Okay, so the answer would be 8.5%. And plotting that to our graph, that will be the safe stock risk premium. As discussed earlier, to get the risk premium with beta coefficient, we have the formula risk premium for stock I is equal to RPI, which is RPM multiplied by B. So this will lead us to the answer of 2.5%. Now for R sub A, we have B is equal to 1 for an average stock. Okay, so the answer for that is 11%, the same as the given market return. So lastly, for the R sub high, we have B is equal to 2. So which is riskier, of course, than B is equal to 1. So, of course, its required rate of return would be higher, and for this instance, this is 16%. So solving the relatively risky stocks risk premium will give us 10%. Okay, now, the slope of the SML reflects the degree of risk aversion in the economy. So the steeper the slope of the line, the greater the risk premium for all stocks, and the higher the required rate of return on all the stocks. So when the beta goes up, meaning more risk, the expected return also goes up to compensate for that risk. So how steep or how flat the SML is depends on how willing investors are to take the risks. So if they're really cautious, the SML will be steep, meaning they'll demand higher returns for any given level of risk. If they're more relaxed about the risk, the SML will be flatter, okay, and they'll accept lower returns. Understanding the security market line, or the SML, gives us important clues about what investors expect and how they feel about risk in the market. Okay, so reading the slide, a firm can influence its market risk, hence its beta, through changes in the composition of its assets and changes in the amount of debt it uses. So companies' beta can also change as a result of external factors such as increased competition in its industry, the expiration of basic patents, and the like. So when such changes occur, the firm's required rate of return also changes. Okay, so and this will affect the firm's stock price. For example, we have consider Allied Food Products. Okay, so with a beta of 1.48, now suppose some action occurred that caused Allied's beta to increase from 1.48 to 2.0. Okay, so if this is the case, then Allied's required rate of return would increase. So as previously discussed, the formula is RRF is equal to RM minus RRF, which is again the risk premium, then multiplied by B, or beta. So again, we have RRF, which is 6%, and then RM, which is 11%. Now, to solve for the first beta, which is 1.48, the answer is 13.4. And for the second beta, which is 2.0, the answer is 16%. So Allied's food products required rate of return increased from 13.6% to 16%. This change will have a negative effect on Allied's stock price. Now, there are some concerns about beta and the CAPM. Okay, so the capital asset pricing model, or the CAPM, is widely used by analysts, investors, and corporations. However, a number of recent studies have raised concerns and about its validity. So recent studies, including one by Eugene Fama and Kenneth French, cast doubt on historical relationship between stock returns and market betas. So these studies challenge CAPM's assumption that market risk, measured by beta, is the sole factor influencing asset pricing. So some experts have long questioned CAPM's ability to predict real-world market conditions. As an alternative to the traditional CAPM, researchers and practitioners are developing models which with more explanatory variables than just beta. In the multivariable models, risk is assumed to be caused by a number of factors, where areas CAPM gauges risk only relative to return on the market portfolio. So although multivariable models represent a potentially important step forward in finance theory, they also have some deficiencies when applied in practice, like increased complexity and data requirements. So as a result, the basic CAPM is still the most widely used method for estimating required rates of return on stocks.
Chapter 8.5 Some concluding thought implication for corporate managers and investors. Number 1 is there is a trade-off between risk and return. Kagaya ng sabi ko, yung mga investors, gusto nila yung malaki yung return pero ayaw nila sa mga risk na mangyayari sa mga businesses nila. Number 2, diversification is crucial. Sa pamamagitan ng pagda-diversified ng maayos, ang mga investors ay magagawang mabawasan ng risk without reducing their expected return. Number 3, the returns are what matters. When assessing performance of the real return kagaya ng kung ano ang natin sa'yo pagkatapos ng inflation ay talagang mahalaga. Kasunod ang expected inflation increase, kailangan ng mga investors tumanggap ng mas mataas na nominal return. Number 4, the risk of an investment often depends on how long you plan to hold investment. For example, a common stock can be extremely risky for short-term for investors. Pero pagkalipas ng maraming taon, ang mga stock ay hindi na siya gaano ka-risky when it held as a part of a long-term portfolio. Number 5. While the past gives us insight into the risk and return of various investments, there is no guarantee that the future will repeat the past. Kagaya na sa mga stock, dahil hindi siya stable, pwedeng ito bumagsak sa market. Kahit na maahal sa market nito sa mga nakalipas o nakaraang taon. That's all for the groups.
Chapter 8.5 Some concluding thoughts, implication for corporate managers and investors. The concept between risk and return is an important concept, and it has numerous implications for both corporate managers and investors. Number 1, there is a trade-off between risk and return. Yung mga investors, gusto nila yung malaki yung return pero ayaw nila sa mga risk na mangyayari sa mga businesses nila. Number 2, diversification is crucial. Sa pamamagitan ng diversify ng maayos, ang mga investors ay magagawang mabawasan ang risk without reducing their expected returns. Number 3, real return are what matters. When assessing performance, the real return kagaya ng kung ano ang natira sa'yo pagkatapos ng inflation ay talagang mahalaga. Kasunod ng expected inflation increase, kailangan ng mga investors na tumanggap ng mas mataas na nominal return. Number 4, the risk of an investment often depend on how long you plan to hold the investment. For example, Common stock can be extremely risky for short-term investors. Pero pagkalipas ng maraming taon, ang mga stocks ay hindi na siya gaano ka-risky when it held as a part of a long-term portfolio. Last is, while the past give us insight into the risk and return on various investments, there is no guarantee that the future will repeat the past. The past performance is not guarantee of the result. Market condition, economic factors, and other variables can change, leading to the different outcomes. Kagaya ng sa stock, dahil hindi siya stable, pwede ito bumagsak sa market, kahit na maayos ang market nito sa mga nakalipas o nakaraang taon.